how do you define failure? What is failure to?
You go into the lab, for instance, let's say you're experimenting with something. The fact that you do not achieve what you had or thought that you had intended to prove in the lab does not mean that you failed or the experiment has failed. It means that there must be another route or another way in which you can achieve the same kind of results. So scientifically, I think the concept of failure, it doesn't make much sense.
Is there a failure that's taught you the most in terms of just shaping how you lead? Where you look back?
I can't point at one, but I think there are several that actually probably meshed in my mind. I think one of the fears of failure that I have is making a mistake in the judgment I make of people.
Okay.
Particularly when I'm going to give them responsibility, and I've experienced that where you appoint a person and then you realize halfway through that no, there is no way that this is going to work. I had believed and thought that I was going to be a lawyer in life, study law and be a lawyer. And the year I was supposed to go to university, I was arrested and I ended up on Robben Island.
Yeah.
So that didn't work.
Yeah.
When I was on Robben Island, I was kind of lured towards political science and the economic sciences, and so I ended up doing a degree in politics and economics.
Today, my guest is Saki Macozoma. We unpack the remarkable career of a true leader. It's not just about his well-known positions at Vodacom, Standard Bank, and Liberty, to mention a few. Today's conversation is about confronting the bumps in the road and the challenges that have shaped the leadership style that he has. Welcome, Saki.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So to start, how do you define failure? What is failure to Mr. Saki Macozoma?
Well, I've never thought I'd have to answer that kind of question, because I've never thought of it as a kind of a concept, intellectual concept or construct, because it's not something that occupies my mind that much.
Really?
I guess
Yeah.
for most of us, we kind of confront it and we define it as failure, rather than go through life and say this construct means failure. But I suppose it means that you have an objective and you know what success means in terms of that objective, and you work towards it, and you don't get the answer that you think or you expect it to be. But that kind of definition is kind of inadequate in a sense, because if you think about the scientific way of thinking, it is that you go into the lab, for instance, let's say you're experimenting with something. The fact that you do not achieve what you had or thought that you had intended to prove in the lab does not mean that you failed or the experiment has failed. It means that there must be another route or another way in which you can achieve the same kind of results. So scientifically, I think the concept of failure, it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. Do you have a scenario in your life where the results of an experiment didn't go as you intended, which gave you an opportunity to pivot and take a different approach?
Yes, I think there are quite a few of those.
Yes.
The one that comes to mind first, I think, personally, I had believed and thought that I was going to be a lawyer in life, study law and be a lawyer. And the year I was supposed to go to university, I was arrested and I ended up on Robben Island.
Yeah.
So that didn't work.
Yeah.
When I was on Robben Island, I was kind of lured towards political science and the economic sciences, and so I ended up doing a degree in politics and economics. And then when I finished that degree, I thought, okay, now I'm going to do an LLB, and I applied, and I actually was accepted at UCT
Yeah.
in 1983 or somewhere there. At the same time, I got a scholarship offer to go to and study at the University of Boston. So I didn't go to law school.
Oh gosh.
And I went to Boston, and I came back, and I started working, and I thought, okay, I registered at UNISA. I never did one assignment. It was just not possible to do it. So I failed to be a lawyer.
Yes, it was never meant to be. Several ways of getting in that just
And the funny
blocked.
thing is that later I worked at the South African Council of Churches in charge of the legal department,
Oh,
which was a very
really?
good title,
Yeah.
except I wasn't a lawyer. I was
Lawyer,
working with
yeah,
lawyers,
yeah.
basically helping detained people, exiled people, people
Yeah.
on trial,
Yeah,
with legal services.
yeah.
In other words, interacting with the lawyers, making sure that there is money for them to be paid, to follow up people and cases like that.
Yeah, yeah. And in more recent times in boardrooms, are there stories where you have sought to experiment in a certain way and yourself and the team around you thought, nope, it's not going to give us the results we want?
Yes, I think it's one of those things that happen pretty often. But generally, my approach in life is not to go to a meeting if I don't know the outcome.
Oh, really?
Because this is I learned from politics. You don't go to a meeting. In fact,
If you don't know how things are going to turn out.
exactly, because
wow, okay.
you don't set up yourself for failure.
Okay.
If we call a meeting, for instance, in the UDF or Mass Democratic Movement in the past, and we said there will be a conference for a democratic future, which is a real story. By the time we get to that conference, we have already written the resolutions. We know exactly what outcome we want and how we're going to derive it and how it's going to be a conference decision as opposed to our decision. So it's the approach, I think, that I have taken and life has taught me. But I think one needs to recognize when things are not going in a particular direction and actually find an alternative route to where they are going. Because the outcome may be through a different route to the one that you conceived or thought about. And therefore you minimize those kinds of things. And I know times when I've called for a pause or a postponement of a matter. You know, there's an interesting way in which in meeting procedure you do that. You say the matter must not be now put when you realize that
the outcome
this is not
gonna,
So that means then you kind of have postpone it or find another route to go.
In that case, how would you then deal with leaders who are, I'm going to say, optimistic? And because, I mean, if there's a matter where to you it is maybe that much more obvious that the outcome is not going to be favorable, but to somebody else they maybe have a completely different belief. How do you bridge the difference in that situation?
Let me tell you a story though to answer that question. When I was at high school, I started getting involved in sport politics, in rugby and soccer in particular. And in soccer, because soccer was a new sport in Port Elizabeth, where I grew up, and there were not many people who were of social standing who were interested in the sport at the time. Hence, people who were even at high school could become officials. I learned from that, actually, even before politics, that the ability to create consensus is one of the most important things in life, especially collectively when you're trying to do things with other people.
Would you call it lobbying, or is it different to lobbying?
I think that the concept of lobbying has actually been muddied by the American interpretation of that word, because it's a dirty word in American politics. But I think it's a consensus building appeals more to me as a concept.
Okay.
That it, as I said, firstly, you need to canvass your position as much as is possible. And if that position is not winning and you think there's going to be a disaster if it does not win, then you should be able to find a way to pause the meetings and actually engage with people. And this is actually where to materialize in the negotiations for the constitution or the political settlement in South Africa. Rather than hit a brick wall because you think I have to do it this way, it's better to say, let's take a pause, let's take a walk. And see whether we can see this thing, or let's come back to this thing next week.
Yeah.
So generally, as if I'm chairing a meeting, for instance, and I can tell this thing is going to cause much more harm if it is presented this way and is just pushed this way, I find a way to kick it out of touch, as we say in rugby.
Yeah.
Kick it out of touch and let people cool.
Yeah. What do you think about corporate politics? What do you define corporate politics as?
It's an interesting question because somebody wrote a book called The Corporate Man in the 40s, I think. When corporations were evolving and they were becoming bigger and all of that. And they were describing the evolution of the corporation as opposed to the enterprise. Because before, if you look at economic history, business was a family, then a family became a bigger family, and then a partnership came into until much later when the concept of the corporation and others, an incorporated juristic person other than an individual.
Yeah.
And they were describing how that had evolved to a point where some corporations described or understood success to be conformity.
Okay.
That a corporation has got an identity, a corporation has got a vision, a corporation has got all these kinds of things. And of course, that goes into the leadership of what we then
the entity,
now know as a corporate, away from the family to the juristic person. But then people decided to say, well, a corporation must have a culture. And what is the culture of a corporation? Depends. I mean, it could be innovation, it could be preservation, it could be whatever they define, or a combination of those things. And then people then are supposed to conform and to that culture and be part of that culture. But obviously, there's got to be leadership in all of this. And that's when the politics start. They start who's going to lead, which is an okay question. Who's going to lead? Not everybody can lead.
Yeah.
And then that person will have other people who report to him or her. And then that second layer are jostling for the attention of this one person who is the CEO, the corporate leader. And that's when the politics starts. And the politics can get to a level where they are so petty that leaders spend a lot of time trying to allocate the corner office or the best parking or those kinds of things. Or does my office have a bathroom?
The view
or the view.
The view, yes.
So it begins as a small thing and but it becomes a big thing. And that's when then people started developing a human resources department to move the day-to-day decisions of that kind. And that's where I think corporate politics come from. And I think they would differ from corporation to corporation, but there is no place without corporate politics.
Yes, yeah. So in my conversations, I have found that corporate politics is seen as a dirty word, pretty much like lobbying. Okay. There's nothing wrong with lobbying, but it's become dirty.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with corporate politics, but it's become dirty. And I've come to understand that one who is successful at operating in a political context in the business has greater ability to progress a specific agenda or to get the requisite support on whatever thing that they are doing for the organization. How do you guide someone who is not navigating corporate politics successfully? If you are
I think,
mentoring someone and you
yeah,
are realizing that,
I think you're very right in your understanding of corporate and advancement, because I think when it becomes a dirty game is when people um, try and use it, or use their influence or their connections or their whatever they have in order to illegitimately push themselves forward. It's understandable that everybody will have an aspiration and an ambition and what have you. But when that ambition consumes a person and they use any and everything in order to advance within the culture of the corporation, then that, I think, becomes pretty destructive. It is something to navigate. It is something to be conscious of, but it is not something to be consumed by. And so I wouldn't argue that a person should be impervious to corporate politics. It's a reality. But I'm saying that the person should not be consumed
yeah,
by that. In other words, don't plan your own career on the basis of corporate politics, or the basis that I can have influence on that, or on the basis that I can make that person look bad,
yeah, yeah.
so that I can shine. I think what corporations have been trying to do lately is to put emphasis on teams. And I remember the first time I came across this was at Standard Bank, when they started as in the investment bank, recruiting non-financial people.
Yeah.
So somebody from law, somebody from sociology who can do social facilitation, somebody who can do something else, and put them in a team.
Yeah.
So that they understand that the outcome is a team. But even in those situations, there is a leadership, because a team
Yeah.
has a captain.
Yeah.
And so one has to be conscious of that. I think one has to understand the culture of the organization. One has to understand the personalities that they're dealing with, without the intention of manipulating them. One must be able to act cooperatively and in a collective sense,
Yeah.
within that structure.
Yeah. I want to hear your thoughts on leadership vulnerability.
Yes.
What is your sense of the value of leadership vulnerability, especially in the context of leading businesses that need a turnaround, leading teams that need to be fixed, and having big agenda to whether deliver to investors or shareholders? This concept of a vulnerable leader in a world that is challenging. What does it mean to you?
It sounds contradictory, actually,
Does it?
in a
Yeah.
a dog eat dog kind of environment.
Yes.
that the
That
corporate,
corporate has become.
not necessarily even the corporate, the market itself,
Yeah.
because the market, I remember Trevor Manuel calls it the amorphous market, the hidden hand, or drives people in a particular way. Some people argue that what they call fund manager capitalism is the cause, the short-termism that has arisen as a result of you must produce growth every quarter.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like looking at a tree and say, oh, has it
It's
grown this quarter? Has it grown that quarter?
Yeah.
And it drives people to do very strange things and very deleterious things to the health of the corporation. Quite often, how does a person become vulnerable in those kind of situations? Because, as one chairman of a mining company said to me, you go and present to a 23-year-old who very brilliant, with a brilliant maths degree from MIT or Stanford, and they want quarterly results, and you're saying this is a long-term game, kind of thing. How do you become vulnerable in that? I think the vulnerable element should relate to how you deal with people. In other words, as much as you are being pushed by the market, as I made the example, you pushing your management or your colleagues, you have to have the compassion to accept that for some people, if there's a change of direction in something, for some people it's going to take them time. It does not mean, again, they failed.
Yeah.
It means that they are adapting, and perhaps your method, and that's why change management became a concept in business, because people aren't just, you can't go to bed tonight and wake up knowing something that you didn't know yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think it should be in that context that one should see the vulnerable leader, in the sense that they understand that there will be individuals, there will be groups, there will be teams who won't catch up immediately. And the ones who catch up immediately does not necessarily mean that they're best at doing something. They may be just their first adopters. But actually, if you want the what you are trying to do to spread and into the organization, you need a different kind of person altogether.
I find that for me, when the team is looking for direction and one is leading, let's talk about what we all remember, COVID. There was a lot we didn't know. And I found that it was important for me to show up as a leader and say, I'm in the dark and no one knows if our salaries will be cut. Let me talk about something that was happening. If our salaries will be cut or not cut. And so I talk about this concept of leading in the gray, leading in the middle, where you don't know what you don't know, and you're having to make decisions as and when more insights or data or whatever stuff is revealed to you. How do you lead in the gray?
When I look at economic history, which was interested looking backwards, people who take, say financial decisions, let's say inflation, and people who look at inflation, they will tell you that the best way to do that is look at the long-term trend. Because if you look at last week and the month before and the quarter before and what have you, you might take decisions that are actually very... so I think that the view should be much more longer term than short term, because by definition, gray is a combination of things. What was and what is to be, and we're in the period in the middle. And I think leadership is about making your people understand, for them to make sense of what is gray. And also for them to understand that there is no absolute period of clarity in any organization or in any person's life that will last forever. The examples of corporations that were actually leading corporations, if you take 20 years ago and say, what were the top 10 corporations? All of them are gone.
Yeah.
They were very clear at the time, and Nokia was everybody's. And nobody ever thought that Apple would make a phone that actually would change the world. So I believe that there is always a gray area, if you like, because you don't know, for instance, what's coming down the line. But a leader must make sure that there is no... people shouldn't doubt themselves or shouldn't feel inadequate because things are not as clear as they are. And I think I like your example of COVID. Nobody knew. And we couldn't even go to history and say, well,
there wasn't.
If we looked at it from an economic history view, would say, oh, the Great Depression in the US happened in this way, and the deep was this low, and then these things happened, and then there was a recovery. We had no idea whether we were going to leave.
That's it.
People made references to the 1918 influenza that came out of the First World War, as one recent historical moment to refer to. But I think uncertainty is something that we must embrace and accept. And I feel perturbed if I feel too certain about something.
Really?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
at the back of my mind is, what am I missing?
I do always feel
Yeah,
like you've got to
what am
ask
I missing?
yourself that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think part of the leadership compassion, if you go back to that kind of question, is understanding that you are not the only one in the room with the answer. Your job is to make sure that those who have the answer, who may be sitting in the corner there, have the courage to come out and say, I think, without being bullied.
What is the role of your inner circle when you are in the muddy, murky space? Where do you seek guidance as Saki? Who's on your top 5 phone list? Do you phone your priest? Do you phone your uncle? Do you phone your son, your daughter? Like, just to get to a clearer place.
I think it's a function of need or what the issue is. I think every individual has got a group of people, but I don't think them as one inner circle. I think them as concentric circles. That if I was dealing with a question that requires a moral judgment as opposed to a legal judgment.
Okay.
There are people I could go to Bishop Mbumdwan and say, Tlangamandla, I'm facing this thing. On the one hand, there's this. On the other hand, there's this. But you, as a person that I respect in this area, what's your view? And I think those go-to people are very useful, and I think you cultivate them over a lifetime. And you'd never ask them to make a decision for you so that you blame somebody else when something else happens. You ask for a perspective in order to inform your view to take a decision. And I think it's a very critical tool in the arsenal of a leader to have people who desire nothing from them, who need nothing from them.
Yeah.
That is as a purely intellectual relationship, and you know that those people will give you an honest answer, whether you like it or not.
Do you shy away from people who disagree from your view? The ones who
I
are likely
like
to challenge
no.
you? Yeah.
I was raised in a time and a period where debate, argument, and everything was there, without being disputatious. And there was an old man in the ANC who used to say, we must not disagree, but don't be disagreeable.
What's the difference?
The difference is that you can disagree and say, I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
But you can be abusive in disagreeing.
Okay. The way
So
with the manner in which you disagree.
The manner in which you
yeah.
disagree. But even when you disagree with a person, you don't have to ridicule the idea. You don't have to ridicule their argument. You need to normally the best way is to, have you thought about this? What if this happens? What if that? But when you're dealing with that kind of situation. But I don't shy away. But there is a time to say, I don't think this is getting anywhere. And as we say, you are generating more heat than light. At that point, call it.
You must have the wisdom to know
when
the additional voices.
It could be a wisdom, it could be a feeling. I don't know, but I think it's something that you grow with, and at some point, this is not going, and actually will emerge from this conversation at a worse position than we started at. There's no point in doing that.
Is there a failure that's taught you the most in terms of just shaping how you lead? Where you look back,
I can't point at one, but I think there are several that actually probably meshed in my mind. I think one of the fears of failure that I have is making a mistake in the judgment I make of people.
Okay.
Particularly when I'm going to give them responsibility, and I've experienced that where. You appoint a person, and then you realize halfway through that there is no way that this is going to work, because ultimately I think the initial judgment about a person and the role that you want them to play where you lead is very, very important, and that I have had many of those kinds of failures, and in a number of times they've had it ended up in dismissals, in lifelong, problems. So yeah, that's one. But I don't want to be specific about that.
No problem. What's the role of gut when you have to make your decisions?
I think that a gut feel is the last step when you are about to put the signature. I think you go through, at least I go through all the processes, and I make sure, obviously I don't do it, I make sure that there are people who do those things, and I check and I apply my judgment. But I think gut feel is important, because if there is anything in you that says, I'm not sure, if it's a decision that is that important, go back. Don't be beholden to a deadline. Go back and say no. Especially when you know that this decision has a long-term impact and effect on the organization.
So as we get closer to wrapping up, as a person who is leading several boards, and you're influencing large organizations, some of us executives have this desire to sit on boards. If you were to give 3 characteristics, and you are giving me guidance on Nontogozo, if you want to sit on any board, these are the 3 things you must know as far as it pertains to making the tough calls and dealing with challenges and failures in the boardroom.
It's interesting because this is a question I get asked.
Oh, really?
Yeah. How? Yeah. Because people need to transition from executive to more leadership roles, i.e. not management roles. The first thing I tell people is that it doesn't pay much.
So do it not for money, do it for other reasons.
It doesn't pay much.
Okay.
There's no bonus, there's no, it doesn't pay much. And people think if you're going to make a living out of something like that, you probably need 4 or 5 boards. These days, you will not be allowed to sit on 4 or 5 boards, because the legitimate question is, where do you take the time from? What is my advice normally is to people, you need to choose an area of specialization. In other words, and that specialization could be professionally, in this profession, I'm a CA, therefore financial is an area, or I'm in HR, or I'm in marketing, yes, or I'm in marketing. This is choose an area, but that area, once you've chosen that area, look broadly at different industries. Because if you are in marketing and all you know to market is chocolates, okay, you can say fast-moving consumer goods. Yeah. But if you are too narrow on in the way in which you apply yourself and understand the world, there is an issue there. Yeah. And I would also say that it's important to, once you've done those kinds of things, it's important to observe, even before you make a decision, as to what the culture of the organization that you're targeting is, and how actually they recruit. Okay. Because the way in which organizations recruit is pretty different. Traditional, of course, was called the old boys tie network. Yeah. It's not exactly like that. It's not possible now to say, "Oh, I know, he's my chummy. We drink whiskey together." Yeah. Can you have that? There are processes that have to be entered into. But what should a person prepare themselves for mentally? For mentally is to be able to remove yourself from the detail. And I remember at Liberty we had a lot of debate about whether we should recruit actuaries onto the board of Liberty, because what was Liberty about? It was about risk-taking. Yeah. So you need people who understand what the risk-taking is. Those people are actuaries, and but the problem is that we had is that if a person then sits on the board as an actuary and then starts questioning the company's actuaries, as to whether their calculation is right and their calculation is wrong. Whereas their job on the board is directional. It may be that number is wrong, but what's the consequence of that thing?
Yeah.
It's not the method or how you were taught to do that thing. That's not the point. The point is when you put it together with all these other factors, what harm may it do, or what good may it do, or could it be enhanced if it is going to do good? So that is what I mean by extracting yourself from the details. Because as a chairman of a board, what I try to do is to make sure that all the minds and the characters and the experience of the people that sit around the board is applied to all the major issues collectively. And so you don't want a star, a board member who has a single issue. You want somebody who thinks laterally, who thinks vertically, who thinks across other industries, who thinks from their experience, I've seen this happen, and this was a consequence. Therefore, think this way.
Yeah. And then lastly, a young Saki Macozoma, what advice are you giving that person who is finishing university now and is wanting to be a leader who influences industry and have the success you've had?
I would say the one thing that's in your control is to invest in yourself. And invest in yourself in which way? Invest in yourself in terms of the depth of your knowledge and the width of your knowledge. Invest in yourself in what way? Your emotional stability. Invest yourself in what way? Be determined not to be employed.
What does that mean?
It means your first point is I've got the skill set, which may be basic at the degree level. When you lift your eyes from your university exams and you've got your certificate, you shouldn't be saying, where am I going to get a job? You should be asking all kinds of questions. Can I make a job for myself? Can I join other people who are not in a corporation? Can I do that? Ask yourself very different questions that would be in my time, because the world has changed. And earlier on, I talked about the evolution of the enterprise from family to corporation. It's going the other way around. A lot of stuff is coming out of people's garages. Back to the cottage industry that we left 3 centuries ago.
Sure. That was amazing. Thank you, Mr. Saki Macozoma, for a conversation. We've come to the end of the podcast. It goes so fast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That is Cheers to Failure with Saki Macozoma. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please won't you do me a favor? Click the subscribe button as well as the notifications button so you know when we've got new content on our YouTube channel. And share it with your friends, whoever you believe needs to know that failure doesn't mark the end, but is filled with beautiful, glorious lessons we all need to have. Thank you.